Here we are in our new venue, which is John and Phil's Cafe Bar here in Bakewell, and we've come to the chilly season. We've been recording outside, as you know, over the summer, spring and summer, and but it's chilly and it's time to come in. So we're trying this new venue and see how it goes. John, the seasons change, and I'm reminded of lines from Homer, which goes something like this: "The race of men, they are like the leaves that generate. They fall in the autumn and return in the spring." And in these changing seasons of our life, I thought I would ask you to reflect on what it's like to be a John Butler leaf and whether you'll be returning in the spring.
Well, we don't know the answer to that one, do we? At my time of life, we have to be, how does it go? Redeem thy misspent time that's lost, and live each day as if thy last. The summons may come at any time. We have to try and be ready. Spring, well, maybe.
What does it mean to be ready, John, from where you're sitting?
What does it mean to be ready? I know how I can answer that. Look, that if when my body crumbles to dust, nothing whatsoever real would change, I, in my true sense, would be exactly the same as I am now. Now, there's something for you to digest, isn't there? But you know, it's absolutely true. Look, you see, when I am present, really present, sort of immersed in this invisible presence, at one with it, literally, so that I can't say where John Butler, well, I can say where John Butler is, but I can't say where I end and the presence begins, you see. Now, whatever does it matter, whether I've got a body or not, or whether this body is going, or it's just being eaten by worms. It just doesn't matter. It makes not an iota of difference. I'll be as live, I'll be as alive as I have now. In fact, more so, because I won't be hampered and impeded and fenced in with this mortal flesh. I'll be even more mobile than an autumn leaf dancing along in the wind. I'll be a spiritual being, a pure spiritual being. As I am now, only I'm sort of not pure, because I've sort of got this impurity of the flesh hanging about me, and, you know, still legacies of what's meant by John Butler, which is really, you come to see it's just an impediment, really. It's a sort of label that's hung around your neck when you're young, and you spend most of your life trying to figure what it's all about. But when you eventually get the real message that it's not what I am, rather than what I am, then you begin to taste freedom. And then your whole view of death completely changes.
It'll be more of a sigh of relief than a sigh.
Well, in all seriousness, you see, why not? Look, when we meditate, just as I was meditating, well, a couple of hours ago I was meditating. Well, I don't really know if deep meditation is any different from dying. I mean, you lose all sense of separate existence. What happens, I can't tell you because I'm beyond description. But when I open my eyes, I feel good. I feel in the right place. Yes, I'm not going to say sort of silly things that it's. You don't really feel anything actually because you're beyond feeling, but there is a total surety after deep meditation that in comparison to that, nothing else really means anything. It's just a passing phenomena called the world, including John Butler.
Here today, gone tomorrow.
Here today, gone tomorrow, exactly. Just like Homer describes a leaf that in its time flourishes and then dies down and is blown and ends up just like you and me, being eaten by worms and converted back to the Mother Earth from which it came.
And the return in the spring? Are we talking reincarnation, or are we talking atoms and molecules being recycled?
You see, in a really clean death, there's nothing to reincarnate. You see, it only seems likely if you don't let go of the John Butler. So you die with luggage still around your neck. You see, then maybe that has a consequence. But a pure death, which I'm talking about, which of course is the thing to aspire to, you completely let go all attachment to worldly life, so that you sail off completely clean. Then what's there to pull you back again? Unless, of course, you come under the divine impulse to return at a higher level. As so it's said, some of the great saints do. As I think the Buddhist word is bodhisattva, isn't it? Those that come back to help guide mankind back to their true home. I'm not sure if that's really my decision. I suspect that it may arise through one's love for the world. I don't know. I'm not in a position to comment on that.
I'm reminded of, there's a lovely verse in one of Paul's letters, I think it is, where he says, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain, which is very upside down to sort of modern man's thinking.
Well, it is, because see, we live the sin. You see, the world is sin. The world is a consequence, you see, of turning from our natural divinity away from it. So, I know I've explained this much more fully. I haven't really got time to go all over it all again now, but the gist of it is that we've turned from spirit to matter. So we live in a world, well, just to play on words a bit, a world that seems to matter. All these great issues of the virus and everything else matters terribly, doesn't it? Because we live in a world that identifies with these physical phenomena, with matter, in other words. You know, in spirit, for example, you know, there's no limit. again, it's easy to talk a bit silly. I'll give you an example. There's a well-known saint called Saint Nicholas, and the tradition that goes with Saint Nicholas is that whenever anyone, anywhere in the world calls for help, Saint Nicholas will come. In other words, he has the ability to zoom 1 minute to Australia, the next minute to Canada, the next minute to the North Pole, the next minute to here in England. In other words, he can go anywhere at any time, and he's been doing this for nearly 2,000 years. Well, you know, compare that to you and me. We can't go anywhere without booking an airline or something. So, well, I just throw that out to you as an example, you see, of the limits of this world. And the unlimitedness of the spiritual world and those who inhabit it.
Could you say that this life, or our experience of this life, is bounded, but the spiritual life after this life is unbounded?
Well, absolutely. That's dead right. Whether you use the word limit or bound, it's exactly what it is. Yes. Bounded, bonded, bound by chains, aren't we? Fetters. It's in a dungeon. That's what worldly life is. We're imprisoned under sentence of death, imprisoned, condemned to hard labour, or at least to work for our living, for the sweat of our brow. Well, not many people sweat these days, do they, when they work? Under sentence of death. And this worldly life is death row. Why pretend otherwise? Get that under your hat, and then you can begin to, you know, work with something better.
Just scratching the ears going by on the wall of the cell.
Well, yes. But you see, if you get things the right way round, no matter how deep the dungeon, you're in absolute freedom. Put spirit first.
I'm reminded again of what must be your second most popular phrase, John, "Don't fence me in." Yes. And of course, because I know that you have been a working cowboy in Australia when you were a young man herding sheep. I've always seen this as a literal, you know, earthly fences or farm fences, you know, and you long for the wide open spaces. But there's, of course, I've just seen now, this has got a sort of a spiritual dimension to it as well. Don't fence me in.
Well, absolutely. But you see, we think in terms of worldly. Yeah, as a young man, like many other young people, I wanted to make the world a better place, the world a better place. And all my focus was, I was a young farmer, I wanted to control soil erosion and reforest the deserts. You know, this biodiversity hadn't been thought of then. Animals had started dying out like they have now, all these species. So the issues were different. But the ones that were current when I was a young man, I very much threw myself into all that work. And it was only after some years, many years really, of doing that work. I'll tell you exactly what happened. You see, I was a farmer. I was one of the first organic farmers, and totally dedicated to it. And gradually, I was really meditating. I can't just offhand. I've written books about it. If anybody really wants to know, it's all in my books. Gradually, the farm expanded ever wider to include, first of all, my neighbour's land, and then the wider world, and then what was called in those days the third world, where of course there were great issues of hunger and famine and all that. And I began to realize that physically I couldn't do very much. I mean, neither my strength nor my reach was sufficient. But body, mind and spirit. I used to write a bit in those days and do quite a bit of lecturing, mostly on meditation but on organic farming. And you know the old saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. You know, you can influence more people when you start working with speech and writing. And then that gradually developed too into the sense of what prayer is all about. Well, prayer is really the spiritual reality of what I was talking about earlier on in this video. It's affirming the eternal nature of what we call creation, which is actually a fallen representation of the divine origin. You know, someone says death, but see, there's a switch in my mind. No such thing as death. Life. Nobody dies in reality. Loss. No such thing as lost. You can't lose it. Nothing is lost in the real world. And prayer is really putting things the right way round. Now, what we project out of our mind, thought is creative. You know, if you go around believing in coronavirus and worrying and reading all the media about it, and talking about it all day long, you can bet your boots it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. It'll become a monster, which will take you over with fear, and no doubt will influence the people that you're talking to and interacting with. Now, if you just don't do that, if you say, well, it's just a transitory phenomenon, then you just like taking the plug out of a balloon. It goes, psh, just shrinks. This is the way to deal with the monsters of this world. You see, this is exactly what prayer does. Or prayer, as I understand it, prayer is affirming the spiritual reality of what appears to our eyes of flesh as a fleshly world. And then, of course, yes, you die. Everything dies around you. The world falls to pieces and everything's dreadful. That's the result, isn't it, of losing our divine heritage, which is what sin is. This is the human condition.
As long as man has imagined what death and life after death means, John, there's been an aspiration to go beyond death or to outlive death. Woody Allen was asked, would he like to be immortalised through his films? And he said, no, I'd like to be immortalised through not dying.
Well, that's good, not a bad answer, is it? Well, of course, that is, or it can be, that can be your reality. See, we really create our own reality. It's what we believe, isn't it? The world is what we make it. But it takes work. I was lucky. I got interested in, I didn't call it spiritual work, but I read my first books of philosophy, I suppose, in my early 20s and started asking the big questions then. Yes, Phil mentioned I went to Australia. Yes, I went when I was 20. Had a year in Australia, and I wanted to see what the world was like then before men messed it up. And that got me thinking about many of the great issues of life. I saw what what I considered then the spoliation of civilization, its effect on the Aborigines of Australia and the beautiful, pristine bush. Came back through the South Sea Islands and saw a gradual encroachment of civilization and all that it meant on those pure and lovely places.
I didn't know you'd visited the South Sea Islands. That's where Robert Louis Stevenson ended his days, I think.
Yes, he did, in Samoa. I wasn't in Samoa, but I visited. It was a French cargo ship that was picking up copra. Copra is dried coconut kernel, used for soap and stuff. So we had long stops at many of the South Sea Islands, including a week in Tahiti. Unforgettable. Gosh, that was a place, my word. Oh my God. How it broke my heart. They hadn't got an airport then, but they were planning to build one, and so people were talking about how that would bring in tourists.
Wasn't it Gauguin who lived on Tahiti with the bare-breasted young women, I think, was prominent in his paintings?
I've got a little black round stone the size of my fingernail that I picked up from where Gauguin lived there.
I never knew that, John.
I brought it home from my father, who was an artist. I thought he'd like it. What do I do with it? I got a collection of stones like that. Well, perhaps before I die, I'll go down to the river here and drop them in. What else do I do with them? I can't send it back to Tahiti, can I? I've been quite you'd call me an ecological vandal in my time. Sorry, I said that. Don't get cross with me.
Shh. We won't tell anyone now.
Yes, it's seriously, visiting these places certainly got me thinking about what man is, what am I, what on earth am I doing in this world? Of course, I got dreadfully upset then about civilization, what it did not only to the countryside but to the native people. I remember I was very anti-missionary then. I think in the name of good we've done much harm, really. Whether it's really brought benefits, I don't know at all.
I've only been to Australia once, John. I was at Byron Bay, which everybody says is the place to go, so I hung out there. But it was a drizzly afternoon and there was nobody. Usually the beach is packed with surfers, but the beach was empty because there was a little drizzle. Well, I didn't mind this at all, so I had a swim on Byron Bay all to myself. But then it came on heavy and I walked through, I think it was a mangrove forest or liminal forest anyway. And I had a deep sadness descend on me. And the only thing that I thought could account for it was a sense of the Aboriginal loss, the displacement. And I felt it quite deeply how we had trampled and excluded the indigenous people from their land. I suppose there's a sense of that echoed in what you've just been saying. The missionaries, with the best intentions, spoiling paradise.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Oh dear, it's so hard to... Well, it's hard to know what to think, isn't it? I suppose that's why now in old age somebody asked me only yesterday, what do I think about something? And I was quite surprised, really. I said, I don't think about it. And I don't, I've almost stopped thinking about things. He said, what do you do? I said, I live in the present. If you're present, there's no need to think. You know, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? I couldn't have said that 60 years ago, could I? Where does it come from? People have problems with their thoughts, don't they? I don't. I think I've just got bored with them, grown out of them. Yes, that's what happens. I did have a period of trying to control them, but that didn't work. I had some very good advice from the school where I studied meditation, and I think, yes, it was from the head of that tradition, I think, that we got the instruction, get the couldn't care less attitude towards thoughts. I think to get bored with them, that comes from me. The couldn't care less attitude towards thinking is a very good idea. So what? Thoughts are only clouds. Come and go. Yeah, people worry terribly about their thoughts, don't they? That'll make this video worth watching, won't it? Get the couldn't care less attitude towards them.
I think that's the title. Right there, John.
Yes. And then you see you begin to come into a higher level of usefulness. Because think how much, when you get beyond this, you know, constant duality of thinking, come into this higher level of reality, then you begin to see things as they really are.
Well, you have quite a legacy, John. I'm not putting dirt on your grave yet, but you do have a legacy. I think it's 10 books, and it's well over 100 videos now. So something will go beyond the grave. But one thing that you won't hear about John Butler is there will be no Church of John Butler. There will be no method. There'll be no sect. There'll be no you. I don't think I've ever heard you prescribe to anyone, do it this John Butler way. This is not you. So you're not a missionary for yourself, if I can put it that way.
No, I'm glad you can say that, Phil. No. This is funny, all that giving advice and prescribing systems and all that seems to have gone by the board. Now there's just this glorious smile of total freedom, total love, total acceptance, total absorption in the glory of God. Yes, as a young man, if there were two things I wanted, it was love and freedom. And somehow, having said what I've just said, that's the legacy. You see, that's what, it's not, of course, my gift. It's not my legacy, but it is the legacy of removing John Butler from the scene. This glory of freedom. Well, there's no need to say and anything. It's really just glory that includes all these other divine benefits. They're all included. There's no need to list them. You know, I like the little phrase, the less of me, the more of God. And that's just how it is. Eventually there's me just is no more. And there's nothing but God. It makes me laugh now to think of I usually end these videos saying God bless you, don't I? Seems a foregone conclusion now. Anyway, for form's sake, my dears, God bless you. And we'll see what Phil can think of for the next video. Bye-bye for now.